What is up, Green Teamers? We're in part 4 of 6. Today we are filling out the offer in our writing an offer series. We added the forms in our last part, and now we're going to go through specifically just the offer document, talk about listing all the important info like the buyers, the property, price, closing date, earnest money, inclusions, exclusion, time period, other options that are in the contract, and setting the termination. So we're going to go through all those pieces here in that offer that we added in the last episode. So right here in our forms, we're going to go to our residential sale contract of sale. This is the one revised July 2024. As of this recording, that is the newest one. Bring us in here a little bit. Okay. So we've got the address that autofilled at the top. If this is an in-house transaction, meaning I'm working the buyer and the seller side, I would need to mark this. We do have a property condition disclosure statement, so we're going to check this box. There's the other options for the disclaimer or the exemption that you can select there. This is if the property is constructed before 1978. This one that we're doing is after. So we're going to mark that property was constructed after. We don't need a lead-based paint disclosure. Our buyer's name auto-filled. And again, if we're doing both sides of the transaction, we would also check here, and the seller would need to sign this form. The buyer and the seller need to initial every page of this offer, even if it's not agreed upon. This just says the buyer and the seller have seen every page of this offer. So the initials here are not their signatures agreeing to the contract. This is them marking that they have seen this specific page of the contract. Next section is our addendums. Addenda. This is all the stuff that's added to this contract and made part of the contract by these check boxes. So first here on the left, you've got all your financing options: conventional loan, FHA loan, VA loan, USDA, Native American, assumption, and seller financing. We're doing a conventional loan here. And then on the right side, you have additional types of supplements that sometimes we add, including homeowners association, a condominium or townhouse association, any kind of specific supplement added to it, sale of buyer's property presently under contract or not under contract. So those are called contingencies in our world, related to the buyer having to sell their property to buy this property. And then the cooperative compensation supplement, which is an amount of money being paid by the seller to the buyer at closing towards as a credit towards the buyer's agent's commission. So here I list the buyer. I don't usually fill in the seller just to make sure we don't put in the improper name. Some agents get really frustrated about that, so that's however you want to handle it. You can always look in Realist. Sometimes these are right, sometimes they aren't right. So I leave them blank, and then we get them filled out by the seller when they're signing. We're going to have this stuff hopefully autofills if we set up our transaction properly with our county, our legal description, our address, city, and zip. Now the fun part, we start with purchase price. This house is listed at 350, so we will just say we're offering the list price. And then earnest money, we always want at least 1% in there, so the 3,500 is earnest money. And then this could be deposited at our office or at a title company. We're going to put Weicker Realtor Centennial for where the earnest money is going to be held. This could also be a title company that's holding it. And then down here, we're going to put our closing date. Usually this is about 45 days out. So 45 days out for us is right at the end of the year. So we'll put it as a crazy 12/30 closing. That would be interesting. Again, buyers and sellers need to initial all these pages, even if they don't agree to it. Our next big section here is inclusions and exclusions. This is a list of things that should remain with the house. Kind of the gray area stuff that people sometimes wonder about is all listed in this list to hopefully help people know what should stay with the house. Additional inclusions are additional things the buyer would like to stay with the property at no additional cost beyond what's written in this offer. So they could put things in here like a refrigerator, a TV, anything like that that wouldn't, a washer and dryer we see commonly in here. Those are additional inclusions. Exclusions is stuff the buyer does not want to see remain with the property. And sometimes you put things in here like trampoline, even though that wouldn't normally stay with property, just to make sure that the seller sees that definitely needs to be removed. This could also be a shed or an outbuilding or something like that we commonly see in the exclusions. Now we've got our time reference date. The time reference date is a date so you can use for every other paragraph in this contract, a date we can fall back to count from. Time reference date we usually leave blank. And if it's left blank, the time reference date shall be the third day after the last day of signatures of the parties. That shall be the time reference date. The day after that will be day one. So that's how we do all of our time periods in the contract. We base everything off that time reference date. This section here is about the property condition disclosure. Property condition disclosure just is the seller's story about the current condition of the property. It's not related to any realtors, and realtors are not responsible for going and checking the information on the property condition disclosure. Paragraph 7 is the big contentious paragraph to know as a realtor. You need to know it very well. Paragraph 7A says that there's a 10-day period after the time reference date, so day 1 through day 10 of the contract, that the buyer shall have to investigate the property as much as they possibly want to investigate the property. Also written in here is within 5 days after the time reference date, the seller will provide any written notices affecting the property to the buyer. That's what's listed there in paragraph A. If you don't put a number of days in there, it's a 10-day inspection period. Section B shows what types of inspections can be done, which is basically any and all inspections the buyer wants to do on the property, and check out anything they want to during that 10-day period. Part C here talks about the TRR. So there's kind of two pieces of it. The first is termites, and it talks about how the termite uh, treatment is going to be done if necessary, and that'll be showing in the TRR, and we'll go through the TRR in a later episode. And then the second piece is about that 7-day period where the buyer and seller have to come to an agreement on what repairs are going to be done to the property. And this very important line that you may need to point to multiple times in your real estate career. Defect means a condition, malfunction, or problem which is not decorative, that will have a materially adverse effect on the value of a system or component. Those are the items that belong in a TRR or a treatment, repairs, and replacements list. So there's 7 days for the buyer and seller to agree on this list, and then it goes through the options for the buyer and seller to cancel the contract based on them not agreeing on the TRR form, and then talks about the final walkthrough, how the seller and buyer have the right to attend the final walkthrough, and the buyer can check to basically make sure everything's done properly. We're not really filling out anything in that, and I usually recommend just people to leave the 10-day inspection period and 7-day TR period blank unless you have some specific circumstance or reason why you need to adjust it on this contract. Next is title evidence. So the buyer can select either title insurance policy or an attorney's title opinion if they have their own attorney that's going to do the title insurance. But a lot of times the lender will require a specific option, so make sure they have that option with their lender. And then a land or boundaries pin stake survey is used sometimes on raw land or large plots. And you've got that option, or the buyer elects not to receive any land or boundary or mortgage inspection report. However, a mortgage inspection report is almost always required if the buyer is getting a loan. The 30 days to delay closing to correct title. Again, we usually don't fill out anything in there. The most common thing we fill out here is a mortgage inspection report. And then going on, it just talks about how taxes are going to be prorated, where the seller will have the tax responsibility for the days they lived in the property so far in the year up to closing date, and then the buyer takes over after that. This is the residential service agreement, also called a home warranty. The property shall not be covered by a residential service agreement, or seller already has one that they're transferring, or the buyer would like one, and here's how much they're asking the seller to pay for one. Additional provisions we don't want to use too much of, but if necessary for specific circumstances, we may have an additional note in here. Just remember, anytime you're writing, you're not a lawyer, you're not an attorney, so anything you write in here, you're just increasing your liability to some degree when you're writing in there. Mediation just says that we will take anything to mediation first before we use any other means of solving a disagreement between the parties. And then it talks about how breaches work for both sellers and buyers, incurred expenses that have been had because of negligence by either side. But the next key thing we need to fill out is our termination of offer. This is usually going to be about a 24-hour period. So we could put something like 11/19 at 5 o'clock p.m. That's how long this offer is good for. That's how long the buyers are on the hook for this offer. If the seller agrees up to that time, then we've got a contract. However, If it gets past this time and then the sellers agree, the buyers have a voidable contract, meaning they can still agree to enforce the contract, or they can say, hey, it's past the time, this is void. So it's a voidable contract after this time period for the buyers. Underneath that, this is where you would just put the buyer's signature when you're getting it signed. Again, they need to initial everything. The seller needs to initial everything. The associate information, and then everyone needs to initial the bottom page. That's how you fill out the offer. We'll go through the addenda next episode where we'll go through all the other forms, but that's how you fill out that specific offer page. And we will see you guys over in part 5 next time.